to the Skippers press conference ahead of tomorrow's Port Miami import race and of course the start of leg 7 to Lisbon on Sunday. We all know the Skippers are pretty busy, so we're going to roll straight into this, but I am going to start today by just remembering a dear friend to the Volvo Ocean Race, Hans Horowitz, who today, 6 years ago, was tragically killed in the Volvo Ocean Race. But we're not going to dwell on that. I'm going to talk to Mike Sanderson in a minute, who knew him very well as skipper of his other team's boat in that edition of the Volvo Ocean Race. Mike, we do have a trophy in memory of Hans for obviously the rookie of the race. You know, tell us a little bit about Hans and how important it is to have youngsters coming up in the race.
Yeah, I mean, Hans was a wonderful character. He was, Hans actually started off as part of a selection process in the youth team in the ABN AMRO program. He'd already done a Volvo with Brunel Synergy in the race before, and he's just one of those great guys. You know, amazing spirit, amazing, you know, sailing talent, and his tragedy, you know, his loss was such a tragic moment in all of our careers here, or anyone who's involved in the Volvo Ocean Race. And you know, we had some tough moments with ABN, because after that, you know, it was very hard for both teams to even continue. You know, you're thinking about losing one of your teammates. It's as bad as it gets. But knowing Hans, if either boat had quit, that would have been his worst nightmare. He was such a fighter, a great guy, and you know, I think it's just unbelievable that this trophy is named in his memory, and you know, if that was the start of a legacy which is going to go on with getting younger guys into this race, then I'm sure that's something he'd be very proud of.
Okay, Moose, thank you very much. Ken, we're going to come to you next. You've obviously got one of the youngest guys on board with Rome Kirby. It's a big responsibility having these young guys on board.
Well, I think it's a responsibility, but the young guys that we all have on board are in their own ways veterans. You know, yes, Rome is young. He's 22 years old, but the kid has done 1,000,000 miles. He comes from obviously a sailing heritage in his family. So I think it's unfair to call any of these young guys rookies. They're all stars, so they wouldn't be on this boat. I mean, all of us, I'm sure, we get hundreds of resumes from really good young sailors all around the world. You know, you hate to say something like this, but a lot of times these tragedies are just wrong place at the wrong time, standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think maybe all of us, or several of us, were out there that night. That was the worst night of my sailing career, is know what was going on that other boat. And I know as skippers, we all try our hardest to avoid it. But I don't think youth really has much say in the thing. It's a person sitting in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
Okay, Ken, thanks very much. Well, we're all very much thinking of Hans and his family today. But now it's time to move on to this edition of the Volvo Ocean Race and what lies ahead for the guys. So we're going to open the questions out to the floor. Do we have any questions from you guys? There are plenty of you here, so I'm sure there are lots. Please don't be shy. Okay, go on, David.
David Browning, the Irish Times. Could I put a question to both Ian Walker and Mike Sanderson? Same question. We've been told that this race is now wide open, looking at for the top 4 boats. Is that the case, or is it in reality a scramble for second place? What do you think is going to happen? Is it going to be Telefónicas, or is it genuinely a wide open race? Ian?
Well, I think it's genuinely a wide open race. I think I'm sure Ika's not sitting there feeling too comfortable right now. I mean, there's hardly any points between those leading boats, and if you look back at some of the incidents as well, if you take away the mast breakages, the boats would be pretty much tied on points, which shows that everybody's sailing to a very similar, very high level. And we've seen place changing in the last legs. You know, if this is a transatlantic crossing, I think if one boat makes a big slip up in the leading 3 or 4 boats, if somebody breaks something, then you're getting to the stage where you might not recover from a big mistake now, but for sure it's anybody's race, you know, from those guys. I wish I was there fighting it out with them, but you know, so it's a you know, it is one hell of a battle up there, and I think it's a tribute to the new rules. I think it has leveled the playing field a lot. You know, it's a tribute to the skills of those boats, and you know, our job is to try and make sure we get in their way and take as many points off them, and try and upset it all as much as we can.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say. I think Ian's hit the nail on the head. You know, I think it's obviously very even. It is always nice to be, you know, Ika has got a margin though, and I just hope it doesn't come down to, you know, for his sake, obviously it was expensive, and yeah, Alicante was probably pretty pricey too, you know. So, I mean, the top 4 boats have sailed a great series so far. As Ian said, you know, especially you take the mast breakages out of it, and it's which was no wrongdoing on the team's part, so then it gets particularly tight.
Ian, just following on from that, I mean, you have admitted that you have a problem with lack of speed, and you talk about mixing it up and trying to get in these guys' way and take some points off them. Obviously, the next leg is presenting a lot of different tactical options. You know, how are you going to mix it up? How are you going to get around the lack of speed and get in these guys' way?
Well, I think first of all we've got to get through tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's the import race. I think we've done well on the import races. We've won a couple of them, so you know, we feel good about that, especially in light winds. So right now our focus is on trying to get a good result tomorrow and try and make sure that we stay up the top of the pile in terms of import races. And the race, the weather's changing all the time, as always, but the forecast does look pretty interesting right now. There does seem some quite different options you can take. You know, we've got some different options we can take on sails that would have a big difference to how we sail the boat and routing solutions as well. So, you know, I think it's very different to maybe the last leg where, you know, we're following the land to a large extent for a large portion of the leg. I think the Atlantic could throw up some pretty big decisions for the navigators.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? This lady over here.
Hi, Linda Robertson, Miami Herald. Talk a little bit about the tactics and how the decisions are made and how you keep the other team from, you know, figuring out what you guys might be doing, how secretive that part of it is.
Okay, Ken, do you want to take this? You had a recent success in a transatlantic race. You're probably the person that's raced across the Atlantic the most recently. You want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, the tactics are 100% secret. I mean, it's all individualized on board each boat. What we do is we get weather packages every several hours from Volvo, and we all deal off of the same weather packages and throw them through our own routing softwares on each boat. But then it's up to the navigators and the tacticians on board each boat to take that and analyze it and decide what isn't being said in a weather package. And that's kind of the crucial step. It's still the human part of what we do out there tactically on the water. And these boats are fast enough that just a little bit of time can create quite a large spread between boats. I mean, a lot of times you'll see the boats kind of nip and tuck around each other, but then all of a sudden just one little change in the weather and you can get some pretty big distances between boats. So it's, like all these guys said, the weather on this next leg and a transatlantic crossing is fairly typical. There's lots of options and you could see some big spreads out there.
Okay, Kenny, thanks very much.